Well, many years ago, when Ravi was beginning to start his work, I was posted at that time in the then Human Resource Development Ministry, now the Education Ministry. And I remember him dropping in to share the idea that he was setting up a development management institute. At that time, I was quite impressed with the idea that such an important felt need is being attended to. And clearly, I would like to compliment the 5-year journey that the institution has made. Foremost among these, the reason why such institutions become paramount is because in many ways, if I look at the evolution of social sectors in India, their management, clearly there are challenges here. The challenges stem from the fact that colonial times, we had systems which were basically designed for regulation. So a regulatory administrative arrangement, even if it was schools, it was a school inspector whose job was to regulate to see standards. It was the civil surgeon who issued certificates on health. So clearly the framework was a regulation one. Post-independence and with the Constitution of India, and thereafter the thrust on decentralization, the Panchayati Raj institutions, the devolution of powers to the local governments, the frameworks moved, but as we are all aware, development management continued to have its challenges because it needed professionals as foot soldiers who could take forward new ideas, bring in new skill sets, and actually organize the functioning of a school or a hospital or livelihoods of poor households better. So clearly, this background of a civil service designed for regulation, taking up responsibilities for development, whether or not that government system had all the skill sets needed to take care of many of the requirements of delivery. So clearly, development management as a discipline has a very important role in bringing in those elements and skill sets which are ordinarily not there in some of these development journeys. Having said this, I would also like to, what I'll try and do over the next few minutes is to quickly share, and again, as is my want, I always try and see what are some of the positive examples that guide us to move better. It is in that context, if I were to say begin with health, because today with the budget focusing on health, a lot of the debate and the discussions have been on the subject. We are all aware about Tamil Nadu and the public health cadre. How in our own country, there's a state where if an MBBS doctor joins the government, he or she either becomes a clinician or goes into the community medicine discipline. And that community medicine cadre is actually the cadre that manages public health challenges at districts. So clearly, the carving out of a public health cadre many decades ago and its consequences for improvement in health indicators in Tamil Nadu is a subject which has been studied by many and which perhaps has a lot of lessons for other states as well. And for that reason, public health as a thrust and focus, how best we can invest in public health in a manner and in a mode that communities can make better use of it, in a manner and mode that we are able to actually meet the challenges of a large number of pandemics, large number of health-related diseases, where communicable diseases which have a major impact on the health indicators of the country. Friends, likewise, when it comes to communities, again, I would like to illustrate an example. Most of you are aware of the work of the National Rural Livelihood Mission, the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, wherein now we have about 70 million women. But the interesting thing about across states, and we've seen it since we are talking COVID times, I will be failing in my duty if I don't point out the major role that these 70 million women and the 3 million elected panchayat leaders have played in preventing corona and its consequences for rural societies. The social capital which has been built through the livelihood missions, SHGs, across states, they would be known by different names, the Jivika Didi in Bihar, or the Kudumsri volunteers in Kerala, or in Tamil Nadu by another name, the Sakhi in Jharkhand. Across states, the names may be different, but what they bring in is a new level of social capital and energy, which actually makes a difference in the management of community processes, in the diversification of livelihoods, and most important, in community collectives taking decisions and implementing them in a manner that they are able to take the challenges of development better. Friends, in that context specifically, I would like to mention that if you look at the capacity development model in the livelihood mission, it's a mission that assumes and presumes that a poor household is the best ally of a poor household. The community resource persons that the livelihood mission has developed over the years, many hundred thousands now, who are these women? These are women who have actually faced poverty for many decades and years, but who've come out of it successfully through their participation in the livelihood mission and through the diversification of their livelihoods, through the social capital and the community connect. The lesson for us here very clearly is that it is only through a community connect, through an inclusive approach, through an approach of building social capital, through an approach of building social capital in a manner that it also moves on to credit, enterprise, and so on. Because again, broadly, if one looks at some of the states, many of the southern Indian states, where poverty declined much faster than other parts of the country, if you actually analyze it deeply, what comes out very clearly is that 5 developments in the southern Indian states had a very major role. The first and foremost was the access to higher education and high school education. Clearly, when adolescent girls go to schools, high schools, higher education institutions, it makes for a difference. The correlation between participation in high school, higher education institutions and decline in fertility is stronger than the correlation of fertility with health indicators. Clearly bringing out the fact that if a girl in Bihar studies up to class 12, the fertility rate for the household is much lower. Now, so clearly access to high school education and higher education for adolescent girls, decline in fertility. When groups of girls go to high schools and higher education institutions, the collective formation of that adolescent girls group in the village happens, which leads to the self-help groups. When you have basic high school education, you can also branch into skills or some other livelihood options. And fifth and final point there is the access to credit, something Dr. C. Rangarajan did 27 years ago, up to 10 lakhs collateral-free loans for SHGs. So access to higher education for girls, decline in fertility, collectives and self-help group movement, skills and diversification of skills and livelihoods, and access to credit. These completely transform households in a very meaningful way. What has been attempted over these years, over the last so many years now, has been to actually follow in similar principles in many of the other parts of the country. And it's a very happy moment when you find Bihar, for example, the Jivika movement is in every village. In Jharkhand, in Odisha, in Madhya Pradesh. In Madhya Pradesh, of course, we still have about 55-60% of the villages having the SHG movement, not all of them. UP has also been expanding very quickly, but still has a long way to go. I'm giving this example because of the development management theme. Social capital is the essence of it. Our next step was to bridge the gap between the elected panchayat leaders and the women from self-help group movement. That's important because ultimately at the end of the day, what would matter is this community collective and the arrangements for local governance which are in place. How does one evolve or develop at the local level the panchayats as an agency for local governance, not merely as an agency for service delivery of only a few things? Now, clearly that transformation of role, if we allow it to remain a monopoly of kinds, where the only executive authority, every authority is with the panchayat, all forms of monopoly can have their own challenges. But when you have the countervailing presence of community organizations like women's collectives, automatically it also contributes to a democratization of the leadership of elected panchayats. We have found it in state after state when the two choose to work together or they are made to work together through the institutional frameworks, the PRI SHG convergence, that adds strength to that panchayat in its forward journey. For a large number of programs, where some of you may have had a chance to look at the NFHS 5, for example, which has just come out. Yes, there are challenges, but I'm sure many of you would have also had a chance to look at Sikkim and Bihar. I would urge you on nutrition, for example, look at Sikkim and Bihar, and you find that 3 to 5% point decline on stunting and 3 to 5% point decline on underweight happens in these two states. It is not that they have run any program very outstandingly well, but just that it is that community connect, it is that public information, it is that ultimately what it brings out is that ultimately the challenge of stunting is no rocket science, but it needs an approach which is far more community owned. There is an understanding in the community what is leading to stunting. On a large number of other parameters, if you look at, say, access to LPG gas under the Ujjwala program, or electricity connection under Saubhagya, or LED bulbs, or bank accounts under Jan Dhan, or improved immunization, rural housing, toilets and sanitation, both the NSSO data from the 76th round 2018, which is the basis for the last chapter in the economic survey, the basic necessities index. Some of you may have had a chance to look at that. I'm bringing this because basically the model that was followed, which got epitomized in the Gram Swaraj Abhiyan in 2018-2019, where we took up about 63,974 villages for a universal coverage of 7 programs. For the Ujjwala LPG gas connection, the electricity to the household, the free connection under Saubhagya, LED bulbs distribution, Mission Indradhanush for immunization, bank account through Jan Dhan, accident insurance and life insurance. We find that both in the NFHS 5 as also the NSSO data, on many of these parameters, the movement forward has been very significant. When you look at the basic necessities index, on many of these, you find that the asset base of very poor households on many of these parameters, for example, in the last about 7 years, nearly 20 million homes, 2 crore houses in rural India have been completed. Another about 10 million likely to be completed over the next, say, 12, 14 months. Now, given this kind of numbers, considering that there are about, say, 18 to 20 crore households in rural India. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that we have some of these lessons on management. Technology, again, the role of technology. Each of these 20 million houses, stage of construction wise, you can see in a public website the geotagged image of every stage of construction. The MGNREGS, which had a lot of its own problems, how many of them have been resolved through use of technology. Technology as a means, not an end in itself, as a means, because again, every asset under MGNREGS or Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, they're all available geotagged in the public domain. Anybody can see. Now, what happens then is, so technology, if used efficiently and effectively, along with local level community information, public information, the social capital, what comes out very clearly that the discipline of development management, especially in challenging times, we have seen how panchayats and women self-help groups can create a safety net of kinds, even against communicable diseases, even during pandemic periods. Clearly, a lot of our challenge as we move forward in our development journey in this country is also with regard to human capital. Because ultimately, end of the day, any developed country, any country wanting to move towards the high income growth, it has to get its human capital, the capability, every member of the society having an opportunity to develop their fullest human potential. Because, naturally, if 5 crore households report for unskilled wage labor year after year, it shows a development failure as well. Why is it that we've not been able to take them up the skilling ladder? Why are we not able to upskill or reskill or provide some opportunities to further upgrade skill sets on it? So I think at the end of the day, what comes out very clearly is that this development journey in the years to come would require a far more intensive engagement where the whole of government approach, what is also referred to as convergence, easier said than done, and clearly development institutions like ISDM can play a very important and critical role, because what is most difficult to get in many difficult terrain and rural areas is often good professionals. I have seen how a good professional, whether a good school teacher, a good Anganwadi worker, or a good ASHA worker, or a good panchayat leader, or a good women self-help group, ends up transforming the way a community lives. What is it? What are those triggers that can help us to build a movement of positive change? What are those triggers which will help us to develop a more inclusive society? The access to credit, for example. Now, credit is important because ultimately, at the end of the day, it is not only through public expenditure that you can get the better of poverty. You will also need to promote innovative ways of leveraging credit, of using it for diversification of livelihoods, of moving up the skilling ladder, and so on. And what has come out very clearly through many of these journeys, for example, the livelihood mission and the women's groups therein, they have over the last 7-8 years borrowed almost more than 3 lakh crores. But the non-performing assets is barely 2.3%, 2.4%. They not only borrow, they also return. But if this can be used for diversification of livelihoods or for creating higher opportunities for better incomes for poor households, clearly a lot of the transformation can happen through this. Institutions like ISDM, the new professional skill sets needed in a development system, the community connect, and actually institutionalizing that community connect into something larger. A community accepting challenges. For example, the case of Sikkim, I still recall, besides being the organic state, when you travel in the villages in Sikkim, what strikes you, they took up a program for what they called Springshed watershed development. Springshed development, basically, what is referred to in the hills as chashma, water sources. What they have done is the Springshed development, so they have undertaken some works and connected a pipe right up to the village with a storage tank, so that every village gets drinking water. I think so many of these issues across states in the country, what you find is that there are innovative ways in which communities have come together to resolve challenges and issues. Yes, more public investments are required. More opportunities of upskilling, reskilling is required. More opportunities for higher order employment in subdivisional towns, district towns, block level. More opportunities in the emerging clusters of growth, both for farm and non-farm livelihood. So clearly, in the years to come, the challenges would be many. More investments are needed for health, and it's for this reason that the budget today has also highlighted the need for investing in it. The national education policy has also been trying to bring up this issue of how well we can prepare citizens for a more fulfilling life in terms of the opportunities available to them and in terms of their overall human development. So clearly the challenges are many. Across regions and states, the variations are large. But clearly what it brings out is that development management has actually to think through many of these issues. There are so many examples of young people coming together, making a change, whether it is startups, whether it's innovative youngsters out of college who have taken upon themselves the challenge of value addition, of developing value chains in their respective villages. Many of them I have, in my footloose travel across the country, I've had a chance to interact with many of them. Some of the women's groups that you meet, some of the panchayat leaders that you interact with, they give you reasons for hope that if the social capital is strong, if the community connect is strong, if access to credit is available, if education, skill, and better health can be guaranteed through the large number of interventions, And all these, whether it is nutrition or education, any of these sectors, just as access to gas connections or electricity connection or bank account improves through a community-based approach, where the frontline workers, the community connect is all put together, SHGs, panchayats work together. Similarly, for improving a village school or improving the health facilities or improving nutrition indicators, at the end of the day, what we will need to move towards is a more wholesome community connect, a connect that allows us to move more systematically. We will need a much larger number of professionals in the system. I have also had a chance to interact with the Buddha fellows and others, very well-educated youngsters, many of the Ashoka University fellows who've taken upon themselves to build businesses in rural areas, to create value chains in rural areas. Now, many of these youngsters also see how communities, when they have strong social capital, a large number of role definitions, a large number of leveraging the strength of local communities vis-a-vis the economic activity therein. So I think this is a big challenge. We have mobilized communities for social action. We also equally need to mobilize them for economic activity on a much larger scale, a more shared growth approach, a growth which is inclusive, a growth which allows every individual to develop their fullest human potential. So clearly, these are some of the pathways, and there are challenges. Many of them are very daunting. The problem of COVID have made things difficult, and clearly, in many parts, many areas, in many regions, there have been challenges. What we take for granted, say, in rural areas by way of the frontline health workers, the ASHA, the Anganwadi, the ANM, but many urban areas we don't find. So therefore, the new initiative announced today is actually about urban health and family welfare centers as well. That you need to create a robust infrastructure of public health professionals at the cutting edge level to be able to work with communities more effectively, to be able to face up to the challenges of pandemics and communicable diseases over the years, so that communities have better health, longer lives, healthier lives, and less morbidity, to enable them to develop their fullest human potential. Thank you very much.